The name is Walsh. Captain Leo Walsh. Hello everyone, it's JD, and I'm back with another Star Trek episode review. This time it is Season 1, Episode 6, Mudd's Women. So for this episode, we're looking at an interesting character, Harcourt Fenton Mudd. This is actually his first appearance in Star Trek. He's in another episode, but this is his first appearance, and boy is this an unusual episode. But then a lot of Star Trek episodes are unusual. But I just find that he's brought in as comedy relief for Star Trek. Although there is a fair amount of comedy relief. But this character is so outrageous. In this episode, the Enterprise saves a crew aboard a ship, which actually consists of Mudd and 3 women. And these 3 women are actually very attractive, or so it seems. There is a secret though. But I would be giving you spoilers, so I'm just going to let you know there will be spoilers in this video. So Mudd is transporting these women to a planet to be basically sold off as wives, and they're fine with it. That's kind of strange considering this is 23rd century. Why are the women having no problems with being paired off with someone for marriage when they should just be getting their own lives, just work, find their own husbands? This is 23rd century. What is going on here? As this episode goes on, it just made me think so much about how, while Star Trek was progressive for its time, there were some things that it was still very behind on, especially with the treatment of women. Like in this one, women are being treated as objects, something to just be given to a man. And this is common throughout many episodes of the original Star Trek. Women are not treated as equals, they're treated as the weaker sex. Quite often they are. And when you look at newer Star Trek series, of course, they are totally equals. But why are they in Star Trek? Again, this is a reflection of the time it was made, but you'd think they'd be a bit more progressive than that. Putting that aside, this was still a very entertaining episode, but that has a lot to do with Mudd himself. He is one of the craziest characters in the Star Trek universe. In the next episode that he's in, things get even sillier, but we'll get to that when we get to that episode. But in this episode, it's just so weird. He's a con man, and he's running from the law, but there are things I don't get about it though. It just seems as if the Federation is not exactly what we would expect it to be, but more on that a bit later. Kirk was the major focus in this episode. Well, him and Mudd and the women. What I found really interesting is Kirk is one of the only people who's able to resist the women. I'm actually quite amazed. Usually, Kirk is the womanizer. But in this episode, he could resist them. Shocking, isn't it? Also, Shatner's acting was quite decent in this episode, which is a nice thing to see, of course. You know, Shatner's often criticized for his acting, but it was pretty good in this one. Spock is in this episode as well. He's kind of a supporting character, and other members of the crew are just in the background, it seems. All in all, it was a decent episode. It was fun. I think it's one of the classic episodes. I would give this 4 out of 5 stars. So it is a fun episode to watch, but, it is a bit misogynistic. Now, on to the nitpicks, and there are quite a few, believe me. Right off the bat, we have a bit of a continuity problem. I don't think it's really a problem, but Uhura was wearing a yellow uniform. And, well, this was made early on. This is one of the first episodes made, and it was considered as second pilot. So that could be one of the reasons. Now this next one is kind of a scientific nitpick. They're going through an asteroid field, or an asteroid belt, but this is the digital remake, so You'd expect them to be a little more accurate. However, there are asteroids everywhere. That's not what an asteroid belt looks like. In fact, if you pass through an asteroid belt, you're unlikely to see any asteroids at all. But in this one, it's so dense, just scientifically inaccurate. This is the first time we get to hear about lithium crystals. Of course, later on it is changed to dilithium crystals. But since this is an early episode, I don't think they have established that it's dilithium crystals yet. But it's interesting to hear this. This is just an odd thing I noticed. Mud has a really hairy neck. While we were in the transporter room, this is the first time that McCoy has talked about his distrust of transporters. This ends up being a pretty common thing in later episodes and movies. And one thing I'd like to know is, how does Mud know that Spock is half Vulcan? He actually said he was half Vulcan, or Vulcanian. We now just call it Vulcan. How does he know? On the technology side of things, during the lie detector test, there was a sine wave on the monitor. Why? What purpose does showing a sine wave have? One of the great things about watching this on Netflix is you can pause and look at some of the finer details. There's a police record from Mud that they show on the monitor, and it's actually quite humorous. It's like it's made on paper and it's typed, like with a typewriter. It also has a color mugshot, and there's no metric at all. The next thing is, well, here goes the misogynistic part. These women's lives were described as just cooking, cleaning, and fixing clothes. That's it. I don't think that that's what life is like in the 23rd century. Very outdated. Ahmad goes on to say that lithium miners are rich. Now, I didn't think money was really a factor in the Federation. I mean, at least in Starfleet, they don't need it. I've never seen them need any money at all. Which leads to Mud actually saying that he thinks he could buy the Enterprise. I don't think he could buy the Enterprise. How would you buy a starship? This is property of the United Federation of Planets and Starfleet. I don't think he could buy the flagship. And he also said that if he bought the ship, he could become Kirk's commander. That's not how Starfleet works. Really? Is Mud just an idiot? That's like a rich con man buying an American aircraft carrier and assuming command over its crew. Not gonna happen. Sorry. And then Mud goes on to say that lithium crystals are worth far more than diamonds and gold. I had no idea that they were trade commodities in the 23rd century. I mean, I can understand gold being used in electronics and things like that, but diamonds? Even today, we think diamonds are just piles of carbon. It just looks pretty. Sure, it can be used for cutting tools, but we're getting to the point where we can make synthetic diamonds. The value is pretty much worthless, I think. When they reach the lithium miners' camp on the planet, we see that the outside of their homes is kind of futuristic looking. Then when you go on the inside, it looks like it's styrofoam blocks carved to look like rock. And there's rickety wooden tables and all these old-fashioned frying pans and everything. Incredibly low-tech inside. Does not seem like the 23rd century to me. I also have a huge issue with the attitude of the miners. They're actually considering colluding with Mud and holding the Enterprise hostage. Wouldn't that lead to the arrest and charges against the lithium miners? I mean, you can't do that to a starship, especially when you're a Federation citizen. And this is just a little thing. They have circular playing cards. Interesting. And finally, here is a big spoiler. Now, the women have been taking this drug called the Venus drug, which makes them appear younger, more beautiful. Well, they gave them a placebo at the end of the episode. And when they took the placebo, they instantaneously became younger looking and more beautiful. How in the hell does a placebo change the actual physical characteristics of a human skin within seconds? I don't believe it. It's ridiculous. So that's about it. This episode was a fun one, but it has some of the most ridiculous things in it. It's just really hard to believe that this would be the 23rd century. Just so many things are out of place for that. What did you think of this episode? Please leave a comment in the comment section below telling me what you thought. Also, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and please subscribe. Click right on over here. And over here you can see the previous episode. Here is the next episode. And right here is the playlist. It's going to block my head. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.